So we recently put out the MSA version 2.0 with some new features and updates that I would just wanted to highlight for those that are now downloading their version 2.0, or if you're just picking up the MSA Analyzer for the first time. Here are some features, upgrades that differ from the first version, which was already pretty solid, but we added these new features to make it even better and give it that institutional grade standard. There are actually three new tabs. The first one is the version updates, which goes through the different versions. The second tab is the instructions. So if you're not familiar with the MSA Analyzer, this will give you an overview just to walk you through the different tabs and what their functions are. And then the new tab that we added that I'm super excited for is the dashboard. In the version 1, we're using the summary tab as a dashboard, but that summary tab also required us to put in some input. So it wasn't a true dashboard. Now we've created a true dashboard that you can just print out and present to your investors when you're doing your investor calls. For investors who want to get more ideas about the deal, you can just print out this dashboard tab and show them. Starting with the main feature, one of the biggest features we added on this version 2 is the ability to model preferred equity. So if you think about your capital stack, you have your debt and then you have your common equity. But between the common equity and the debt, sometimes you can model in a preferred equity. Version 1 didn't have that option, and we did have some investors that were getting capital from preferred equity and they wanted to figure out a way to model that in. So now in this second version, you do have the option to model a preferred equity. And if you want to think about how that will flow in the capital stack, so you have the debt, so the lender gets paid, your preferred equity gets paid, and then you have your common equity, LP, and your GP. So how do we model that? So when you open the version 2.0 in the summary tab, similar to where we will model the different waterfalls. So in the summary tab, where you select the type of waterfall you want to model, or you select all three waterfalls just to see how the returns look, right below that, so let me save this to try to see a waterfall. So right below that, there's now a section for preferred equity. And if you're familiar with preferred equity, typically they'll ask for a hard pay, a soft pay, and that should add up to the total preferred equity annual return. So right below your waterfall tab, you have your preferred equity section, where you get to enter the total number, the total amount that you get from a preferred equity partner, what that equity rate is, so that's the total rate, 14%, the hard pay, so that's what you'll be paying annually to the preferred equity partner, and then the soft pay, which is the part that gets deferred to the end. So if you get in an annual rate of 14% and you're doing 6% hard pay, then 8% accrues all the way to exit. And in terms of the hard pay, you have the option, you can model it. You can do a non-compounding hard pay, you can do a monthly compounding hard pay, you can do an annual compounding hard pay. And when it comes to the soft pay, which is where it gets accrued and paid at the end, you can do an IRR true-up. And if you're not familiar with these terms, under the debt tab, which shows the breakdown of the preferred equity, also have a description there where you can read it just to understand how the preferred equity works and what the different options are. So like the IRR true-up and the fixed rate accrue. But the IRR true-up just means that at the end, when you're exiting the deal, if you had promised the preferred equity, say 14% in this case, then you have to make sure that the hard pay that you have paid to this point and the soft pay that's owed to the preferred equity, both of those have to add up to an IRR of 14%. And the fixed rate accrue rate just means that you're paying the 6% annually and you're paying 8% accrued every year all the way till the end. And like I mentioned, if you go into the debt tab, scroll all the way below the subordinate debt, we do have a section for preferred equity, which shows you the month-over-month breakdown of the preferred equity. And this is the overview I was mentioning earlier, where if you're not familiar with the preferred equity or familiar with the terms, you can just review this and it'll tell you exactly what the true up is and what the fixed rate is if you're trying to decide how to negotiate that with your preferred equity partner. So the big change is adding that preferred equity, which you can model it. But again, this is optional. You don't have to model a preferred equity in your deal. So you can just set that to 0. And if you set that to 0, that's not factored in terms of the sources that use this tab. Initially, we had this at 3 million. And this is just a sample deal. So if you look at your sources and use this section of the summary table, you do have a preferred equity section now, which shows 3 million. If I set that to 0, so now the total amount you have to raise comes from the common equity. So the changes you're gonna see is that preferred equity in the summary tab. If you go into the debt tab, you see that section at the bottom of the lending section that we had before. And also in the sources and uses tab, you can also see that preferred equity has been added. And if you want to look at the monthly operating statements, there's also a section in there to show you the preferred equity. So it's in the monthly operating statement, the quarterly operating statement, as well as the annual operating statement. So if you see the acquisition loan and your preferred equity comes below that acquisition loan, and then you have your subordinate debt and you have your refinance. So just think about the capital stack. You have your debt, preferred equity, and your common equity. So that's the first major update or upgrade that we did to the analyzer. So let me go on to the next one just to make sure. So we talked about the preferred equity, total raise. This was just a minor fix, but it's useful as you're navigating through the different tabs. So I'm just gonna pick the Performer tab. So in the Performer tab, now you can see the total amount that you need to raise for this deal based on the offer price or whatever you're acquiring that property for. So you have the total amount raised, and we do have this banner, this property banner in all of the tabs. So if you go into debt tab, you can see that the total equity raised, how much you need to raise for that deal. That's also in the sources and uses tab, where if you go, you can see the total amount you need to raise broken up by LP, GP, and preferred equity. So on the sponsor tab, in the previous version, we only had the ability for the user to just select between the preferred waterfall. So if you wanted to see how the returns look for the GP for the preferred Pref waterfall or the IRR waterfall or the tri-tier waterfall, you could do that before. The issue was that within the tri-tier waterfall, we have 3 different classes. So you have your class A, class B, class C. And in the previous version, you could only look at the summary of all those classes. So you couldn't break it down by just looking at class A. For this deal, there's no class A, so that's why we have that. So you could see class B as well as class C. So the change is, rather than just looking at the tri-tier waterfall as a whole, you can look at the individual classes. So that's the update that we made in the second version. Franchise tax. This is applicable mostly for underwriters that are underwriting deals in Texas. For Texas, they do have what's called a franchise tax. So for these properties, you would have your regular property tax, but then you have a franchise tax, which is a percentage of the effective gross income. Typically, it's like 0.331% of the effective gross income. But again, for most people, if you're not underwriting deals in Texas, you may just ignore that or leave it at 0. But for our Texas underwriters, you do have the option where you can add in the franchise tax model that you just need to update this and add what percentage of EGI that franchise tax is. And that has been added in all the operating statements. So if I go into the monthly operating statements, once that's model, you should be able to see that franchise tax here. The next thing has to do with other income line items. So one of the things I found out or came across from version 1 going into the second version is that there was some other income line items that we couldn't just define as other income. For example, if we found something that was non-recurring in other income, that's not something that you want to map or budget in your pro forma going forward. If it was just like a one-time income that the previous property manager had collected, that's not an other income, that's a recurring. So you want to factor that in your pro forma. So we added 3 new other income line items in your T12 mapping category. One is the tech pack. So this was not in the first version. So if you underwrite in a property that has like a tech pack amenity, now you do have the option to model that. You can map that as a tech pack. Say for example, we're just gonna assume that this was a technology package for that property. You do have the option to map that, to enter that as a tech pack. So now that is an option. So now if we come here, you can see that's been factored in. And if you go into your performer, that's factored in as well. It has its own line, and you can go ahead and model that into your performer. So let me get rid of that. Okay, back to other income. The other one is bad debt write-offs. This is very common with a lot of properties, especially distressed properties where the previous owner was collecting a lot of bad debt. Those tenants get evicted from the property and they have to write off these bad debt. So typically on your T12, you see a line, typically in the other income section, that would say a bad debt write-off. The property managers typically will do this for mostly tax purposes. And sometimes it is recurrent, but it may be something that's non-recurrent. So you do have that option now to map that as a write-off. If it was just like a one-time write-off where it's not recurrent, then in your T12 mapping category, you can just write it as a write-off, and in your performer, so that's not included in your performer. Similar to non-recurrent other income, these are very common when it's like a one-time income. Typically, you would see for some properties, you may see a tenant gets evicted, causes significant amount of damage, and there's some legal action taken, and they end up paying that property manager a significant amount, but it's just a one-time income that is non-recurrent. So that's not something that you want to factor in your performer because it was a one-time income that was collected and it's not recurrent. So if you add that or you annualize that in your analysis, then you're falsely elevating what you could potentially collect for that property. So those type of line items are typically labeled as non-recurrent. So you want to label that as a non-recurrent. So when you go into your performer analysis, so in this case, we have this administrative fee, flex secure, one-time charge seems like $100. We don't want to annualize that as something that will be collected. So I'm just going to label it, and the mapping label we have for non-recurrent other income is MISC. So I'm just going to label it MISC. So when I go into my performer and I look at my non-recurrent other income, I know that's something that was just like a one-time thing and is not recurrent. So I can just set that to 0. So now my year 0 analysis does not factor in that non-recurrent other income. So we added the tech pack, we added the write-off, so bad debt write-off, those one-time write-offs, and then we added the non-recurrent other income in your other income section. And they all have the same logic and flow as the other incomes like parking, pest control, and storage that was in the previous version. So it's a similar workflow in terms of coming up with your performer, and if you have to do any stabilized tech package, it's the same process you would do for parking, trash, reimbursement. The next feature or update or change, this is actually a change, not so much of an update that we did, has to do with the cable reimbursement. So in the cable reimbursement in your performer, before we were looking at this as a percentage of the cable income. And what I noticed or what I found and what some of the feedback that I got is that a lot of times that reimbursement just seems like a significant amount compared to what expense that a property manager is spending on that property. And the reason is because sometimes these property managers who have an agreement or some kind of partnership with a cable company where they spend very little, but they get some percentage of the cable income from the cable companies. So you may see a percentage like 2,000% in cable reimbursement. It just makes sense because they're not really spending that much. They just have this partnership where they're getting a percentage of all that is charged to the tenant. So rather than having that as a percentage, now we switched it to a dollar amount per unit per month. So before, cable and internet reimbursement was being modeled as a percentage where similar to say water, sewer reimbursement, where you would do a percentage of the expense Now it's just going to be a fixed amount. So if going forward, you're modeling a property and that property manager was collecting, say, $50 per unit per month, so you just enter $50 per unit per month. And that's what rather than the percentage of the expense that's spent for that line item. So cable has been changed from a percent of the expense to now just a fixed amount per unit per month. So 2.8 added the MSA Analyzer. I already talked about that in terms of the new tab that we added, the instructions workflow. If you just want a refresher what the different tabs are, just go into the instructions tab and it'll give you an overview of the different tabs and what your role is in the entire workflow. Oh, this one is cool. So we added an asset management operational below the line expense items. So when you're underwriting these deals, you do budget for an asset management fee. But sometimes there's certain expenses that asset management might end up incurring that may not be captured by the fee that they're receiving. For example, if it's something where going into the property, you know that asset management will be spending on that property and you want to account for, such as tax filings, LLC fees, resident agent, now you do have an option to forecast that expense. So it comes below the line. We don't want it to affect the NOI, so it comes below the line, and I'll show you what that looks like. So first on the operating statement to show you where that is currently located. So if we go into the monthly operating statement, it's similar for quarterly and annual. So I'm just going to show you on the monthly operating statement. So we have our NOI line, you have your capital expense. So if we're doing any CapEx below the line, you do have that. And right below that CapEx line, now we have the asset management operational expense line. And so where does that come from? So if you go into your performer, and like I mentioned, most operators probably will not even factor this in. They'll just include that in their expenses, but it's not a true expense because it's more of an asset management expense. So I added a section right below the line CapEx reserve section where it's called asset management operational expense. So if you're not using this section at all, you do not need to factor for it, you can just ignore it. If you do want to factor in that asset management expense, you click this and select yes, include below NOI. So now you get to model what expense you're trying to collect. And this is the percentage of the effective gross income. So in this case, I have 0.5%. You can change it to whatever percent you want. And it tells you right here, it's a percentage of the effective gross income. So right now, because I selected yes, include below the line, and I have this as 0.5%, if we go back into the monthly operating statement, so now if we go back into the monthly operating statement, you can see our pro forma analysis now includes an amount that will be collected monthly from below the line. So once we pay our income, once we pay all our expenses and we have our NOI, then the asset management operating expense gets deducted and it continues to flow down to the financing. So to model that, go into your pro forma, and you can include that just by selecting that button and add in what percentage you want to collect from the effective gross income. Moving along, variance. So we added a variance analysis on the pro forma tab. This is to help you when you're underwriting your property to see how far away your projections are from what's currently in place. If you go into your pro forma tab, scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to see this variance analysis. And what this does is it compares your year zero analysis, so your year zero income and expenses, to this section. I typically have this as a T12 income and a T12 expense. It compares my year zero projections or normalized income and expenses to my T12, so what's currently in place. And it tells me what that variance is. So here you can see the status check because the underwriting is significantly higher. This is just additional guide to help you if there are any significant outliers, so to take a look at. So this is the variance analysis that we added to compare your year zero annualized data to the historical data. Sensitivity table. I know a lot of you have been asking about the sensitivity analysis. I have a love-hate relationship with the sensitivity analysis because it gives you very important data, but it slows down your model significantly. So now we have a full 6 tables of sensitivity that you can run to see what your deal looks like before you're making an offer. So that's located in the summary tab. So if you go in the summary tab to the right, you're going to see a sensitivity analysis section. So if you click to expand that, 6 different sensitivity tables that we have: the exit cap rate with the purchase price, hold period purchase price, hold period with the exit cap rate. We have a rent growth and exit cap rate, rent growth, vacancy, exit cap rate, and the vacancy. And what the sensitivity table is going to show you is 3 different metrics: your IRR, equity multiple, and cash on cash. If you're not running the sensitivity table, I highly recommend you turn it off. So right now I have it off. I turn it off because I don't need it right now. But if I'm getting close on a deal, I want to put an offer, and I would test out different sensitivities in terms of like offer price, exit cap rate, then I can come here, turn it on, and run the sensitivity analysis. I have all the instructions that you need to run the sensitivity table. It tells you instructions it's already set up. So all you have to do is just follow these instructions in terms of updating the table. If I'm running a new analysis, I have to make sure that I set this price to what my current price is. In this case, is 43 million. So I'm going to send this to 43 million. My exit cap rate, because those are the base figures, I set that to 5.4. And then from there, I can see the different sensitivities. Again, I have this to reduce by $500,000. You can change it if you so desired. And in terms of the exit cap rate, I have that going up and down, plus or minus by 0.25%. Again, you can make those adjustments in terms of what sensitivities you're trying to see. But when you're ready to run the sensitivity table or update it, just follow these instructions here. So the instructions to create a table: select A30 to F35, go to data, what if analysis, data row, U9, column inputs. For the column inputs, you do F23 and then you hit OK. So just select this as in the instructions, go to data, what if analysis, table. I'm not gonna run it now because it's gonna slow down everything. Go to data table, and it tells you in the row, so you set this to U9, which is the exit cap. And for the column, it says set it to F23, which is the price. So I'm gonna set it to F23. If I was gonna run this, I would have set this to on and then hit OK, and then just wait, and the sensitivity table is gonna run. So you can do that for all of these different tables. For these ones, there are specific instructions on how to run it, because for the rent growth and the vacancy, rather than just updating these, you have to set the proformer. So you have to go into your proformer tab, set the T24, which is the vacancy. So you go into your proformer tab, go up to T24, which is your vacancy, and you have to set that to that value in the summary tab. So you have to set it to that value, and the same thing for the rent growth. So just follow the instructions, pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, just shoot us an email at support@msadatainsights.com. We'll be more than happy to help you set up your sensitivity table or update it. Another thing I just wanted to highlight that I didn't go over is in your rent roll tab and the T12 tab, you're gonna see the link to the parse, the quick roll. This is just on the website. Again, if you are switched from our old platform to the newer platform, you should be able to go directly and click on MSADataInsights.com, quick roll, and walk through the process of how you can quickly parse the rent roll and the T12 and integrate that directly into your MSA analyzers. I have videos on that on our YouTube page where this tutorial is going to be located. So you can just check it out to see how it works, because that saves you a significant amount of time rather than copying and pasting your rent roll data and T12 data into the analyzer, you can do all of that through the MSA Data Insights website now, where you can just drag and drop your rent roll on T12. It's going to parse the data for you, and then you can quickly use what we call MSA Direct to integrate that data directly into your MSA Analyzer and download it, and then you're ready to begin your underwriting. So again, those are the updates that we did on this version. In addition, some of the features that we did to optimize it, and I didn't mention it on here, but we did a lot of work validating the formulas, especially with the availability of AI now. We went through every single tab, made sure to optimize it for speed and accuracy. So if you look at a lot of the tabs, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, for a lot of these tabs, my computer, okay, let's go. Yep, you can see we have these help roll calculations that we use to optimize the calculation as much as possible, because this analyzer has so many features, so many formulas, and so many logic that without this optimization, it will completely slow down your analysis. But we did a really diligent job on the second version to make sure that all the data and the analysis is as accurate as possible. Hopefully this updated video was helpful. If you have any questions, please send us an email at support@msadatainsights.com. And our new platform is msadatainsights.com. Thank you.